Hello everybody, WALL-E, the film that 81% of you guys have seen, 19% of you haven't, one person said was boring, and then was convinced by another one of you guys to give a second chance. The film came out in 2008, around 13 years ago, and ever since has been receiving incredible critic scores, including a review from our good buddy Cooper, who said it was great and awesome, and he also said a few other things, but I don't really know what they mean. And I know it kind of goes without saying because I'm making a video about it, but WALL-E is definitely one of my favorite films, and it has been since I was around 4 years old. But let's hold on for a second, because this video is sponsored by Pretty Peach K and
Lisa Oakman Security
for doing fan art of this YouTube channel, and that's incredible. To see you guys engage in any way with my content really warms my heart, and to see you guys go as far as to do that, it's awesome. Thank you. The year is 2805, and it's instantly revealed to the audience that Earth is currently nothing but a derelict wasteland with no life and literal mountains of rubbish. Ew, gross. We're then shown that a cute little robot called WALL-E is traveling around compacting rubbish and compiling it into stacked cubes. Also, is it okay with you guys if I say rubbish? I know it's kind of a British thing, but there is no way that I'm saying trash, because, not to be rude, but that's another word for garbage, and that's gross. And straight away we can tell that WALL-E has emotions, because every now and then he'll take something from the rubbish that just appeals to him, which is seemingly his way of enjoying his everyday routine. As he continues— I moved my chair down a little bit for the framing. As he continues to move around the city he's in, we can see loads of adverts for a company called By and Large, and this company seemingly makes everything on Earth. In fact, there's very rarely a commercial product that we see in the whole movie that doesn't have By and Large branding on it. As WALL-E wanders through an abandoned shopping mall, we can see written on a passing billboard that his original reason for creation was to dig the Earth out of all of its rubbish so humans could still inhabit the planet, but as seen by the lack of humans, I don't think it worked. On the floor of the shopping mall, there are tons of other identical, no longer working robots that look exactly like WALL-E. The reason that the WALL-E we know is able to outlive them all is because he uses spare parts from other WALL-E robots when his becomes slightly defective. So it's like cannibalism, except it's productive, and it's recycling, so it's good. Then a projected video ad, which presumably is just on a loop, explains that the reason there are no humans on Earth is because they're all currently enjoying a life of luxury on a massive space cruiser, just cruising through space. I mean, this thing has a pool, a captain, and robot massages. Who wouldn't want to be on this thing? The idea is that while all the humans are up in space, all the WALL-E robots are down on Earth trying to make the planet livable again for when the humans come back. After that, WALL-E heads home to his vacated storage vehicle, on the inside of which he's turned into a pretty cool man cave for himself. It's got a TV, lights, and a shelf for all of the things that he collects throughout his day. And as he settles in for the night, his attention is caught by the TV playing an old romantic musical, which gets WALL-E thinking about what it would be like to have a companion with him throughout his days. Not necessarily a romantic relationship, just someone to make him not lonely. We can tell that this is what WALL-E is thinking because of the way that his eyes are completely locked on the screen, but also because of the way that he holds his own hand as if someone else was there with him. WALL-E then steps outside to empty the dust out of his box when he You heard nothing. To empty the dust out of his when he gets distracted yet again by the massive night sky, and this could be a very open-ended metaphor to show either how he feels so alone in such a massive universe, or how there could be someone out there that's just perfect for WALL-E, but they haven't crossed paths yet. And as he continues to look at the sky, a sandstorm starts coming towards him out of nowhere, so he runs inside and he closes his door, but he stops midway closing his door to let a cockroach come inside, and then he begins to close his door again. This shows just how much WALL-E is willing to risk for even the most one-sided of relationships, and it also kind of just shows that WALL-E is a good guy for not letting the cockroach die. Which rhymes. When he wakes up the next day, he goes out onto his roof to recharge his solar-powered battery, and then instantly gets back on that daily grind of compacting rubbish and picking out things that he likes. The fact that we've now seen WALL-E do this twice, followed by the sheer efficiency in which he does it, shows that he's probably been at this for a very, very long time, but still manages not to get bored of it because it's all he knows. No other pastime has been introduced to him. Oh, sorry, you caught me eating my microphone, but I would just like to announce that this is a very special episode of Jack Talks About a Film because I'm actually going to be going outside, and if you don't believe me, stick around because there's proof I do go outside. As Wally continues to do what he does, he accidentally stumbles upon a plant, something that was thought to be completely extinct at this point. The plant's rarity is shown not only through how much time Wally spends staring at it, but how the music diminuendos when it gets revealed on screen. That's a music word. So he puts it in a boot and takes it home. However, on his way back home, he sees a glowing red dot on the ground, so naturally he follows the red dot to the place where it stops, and above him is a massive spaceship. Wally, you gotta get out of the way. There's a spaceship. Wally then watches as the ship lands down on Earth, and at first he's absolutely terrified of it, but his fear is quickly taken over by curiosity for what may be inside of it. Inside of the ship is an immaculate, unblemished, slightly sus-looking robot that has a digital screen for a face and hovers above ground. Also, you guys, I'm sorry, but bread microphone has to go. My hand is just getting too sweaty. Even though Bread Microphone is now gone tangibly, he will still live on in our hearts. Wally then becomes instantly obsessed with this robot because it could potentially mean that he's no longer a Wally is then instantly obsessed with this robot because it could potentially mean that he'll no longer be spending every single day alone. And also because it's unlike anything he's ever seen before on such a grimy, filthy planet. The spaceship then takes off, leaving behind the robot that came with it. The robot then starts scanning random things that it sees, and every time it does scan something, it comes back negative, which is probably a bad thing for the robot, but nowadays when you hear about something coming back negative, it's kind of a good thing. Maybe like it's a test result or something, and I don't want to get too specific, but maybe it's something to do with COVID. Wally then gazes in awe at the robot as it starts gracefully flying around and taking in its new environment, and remember this because this is actually foreshadowing for something that comes later. Green Screen Jack will return later in this video, but for now my eyes are kind of starting to hurt from looking at the lights, so for now, here's a good friend of mine. But then Wally, distracted by his own appreciation for the robot, unintentionally alerts its presence by accidentally breaking off part of a rock, and then the robot fires its built-in laser gun arm at him, because that's a thing. Luckily, the laser strike doesn't damage Wally, but it definitely brings an abrupt end to the movie's first distraction from the wasteland that Earth has turned into. The next scene shows the robot continuing to scan random objects and search for whatever it may be looking for, and as it seems, Wally hasn't lost interest in the robot because of the laser blast, and he still continues to admire it from a distance. As Wally continues to do this, the cockroach that he befriended from earlier steps out into the open and catches the robot's attention, so just like it did with Wally, it fires its built-in laser gun arm at it, but this time, when it sees that the cockroach actually survives, the robot puts its hand out to the cockroach as a peace offering because it doesn't want to be hostile anymore. Because of this, Wally can't help but let out a little giggle at the thought of him and the robot having one thing in common, but unfortunately, this brief moment of joy resulted in Wally once again catching the robot's attention and getting blasted by the laser gun yet another time. However, this time the robot realizes that Wally, despite his rough, alpha male, tough guy appearance, doesn't actually mean any harm and has no intention of posing as a threat. And once Wally develops the courage, he puts his hand out to the robot for the cockroach to jump back onto, explaining to the robot that there are common grounds between the two of them and there's no need for hostility. Once the robot accepts Wally's peace offering, it gives him the old scan to see if he's what it's been looking for this whole time, and after seeing that he's not, the robot kind of just hovers away, leaving the viewer under the impression that Wally and the robot are now on good terms. And even though the robot now only sees Wally as an acquaintance, this makes Wally even more obsessed with the robot, which leads to a montage of Wally trying to impress and watching over the robot, basically trying to get himself out of the acquaintance zone, but it doesn't really work out for him because the robot just doesn't really understand what Wally's doing or doesn't understand understand the gesture he's making. The next scene shows the robot starting to get frustrated with its lack of progress in trying to find whatever it needs to find, and it's in this scene that the robot gets stuck to an industrial-sized magnet. So out of frustration, the robot annihilates this magnet and whatever else is within its reach. But after it does that, the robot hovers back down to the ground and kind of just sits there in disappointment with itself after acting unnecessarily aggressive out of anger and frustration. The reason I think this scene is included is to show that the robot legitimately does have emotions and can feel remorse for doing things that it's not proud of. Then Wally, being the true, well-mannered, considerate gentleman that he is, wanders over to the robot and sits down with it to offer it some company because it's visibly unhappy. But this time, the robot is the first one to add to the conversation, simply offering Wally the word directive, basically asking what his purpose is.
Directive? Directive?
So Wally then demonstrates to the robot what it is that he does all day, and then offers the same question.
Directive?
To which the only answer he was given is
Classified.
The robot then asks Wally what his name is, which he struggles with at first, because after being alone his whole life, he's never had a reason to say his name before.
Name? Wally.
And when the robot repeats it back to him, he nearly faints with excitement, because the exchanging of names is what establishes a mutual relationship, which is something that Wally has fantasized about for so long. The robot then tells Wally that its name is Eve, so let's pause for a second, because from now on I'm going to be referring to Eve as a she, and I'm going to continue to refer to Wally as a he. And I know that technically if I were going to do this properly, I would just refer to them both as they, but that might get confusing when I start using the word they to refer to them both at the same time. So would it be okay with you guys if I just got a one-time pass that allows me to assume their gender? Thanks, guys. After that, Wally then notices another sandstorm coming their way, so he urges Eve to come back home with him, and when they get there safely, he shows Eve all of the cool things that he's collected throughout the years. But the thing that interested Eve the most was the music coming from the TV, so like all of the best newly established friends do, they play around and start dancing to the music for a bit. And understandably, due to Eve's dancing, Wally is launched into the ceiling, and tragically, one of his eyes fall out. But as it turns out, Wally has an entire shelf full of spare replacement parts for himself, so repairing his broken eye wasn't a problem at all. And remember that, because this scene is also foreshadowing for something that comes later. The last thing Wally shows Eve before settling in for the night is the plant that he found earlier in the film, and at first Eve is really interested in it because it's a cool, unique, weird, strange looking thing that no one's ever seen before, but then when she scans it to see if it's the thing that she's been looking for, a green light illuminates on her body, indicating that the result is positive. And yeah, I know that's probably a pretty good thing for Eve, but these days if you hear about a test result coming back positive, you might want to be a little weary, you might want to be a little cautious, because, you know, COVID. Eve's chest then opens up and seizes the plant from Wally's hands, and then she returns to an idle, powered off, unconscious state. At first, Wally refuses to believe that there has been any change in their relationship, and he continues to treat and respect Eve as if she's fully conscious during this period, showing how reluctant he is to admit to himself that his only relationship might be over. But it didn't take Wally too long to come to terms with the fact that Eve might just be gone for good, so with no enthusiasm whatsoever, he heads back out into the city and starts compacting rubbish like he did before Eve came into his life. This time he does it much slower and shows far less passion than he did before, and this change of pace in his workflow is included to show the viewer that Wally now has something that he's far more fond of than piling rubbish. And having to resort back to that after getting a taste for true happiness, it feels like he's starting it all over again. As he works, he notices a bright light coming down from the sky, very similar to the one that came from the spaceship that dropped Eve off on Earth. So without hesitation, he runs to where Eve was dropped off last time because he knew that the ship would be back to collect Eve. When he arrives there, he sees Eve being picked up by the spaceship, so to prove to the viewer his undying loyalty to Eve and his desperation for companionship, he clings onto the side of the spaceship as it takes off and heads into space. The spaceship then arrives at another spaceship, which happens to be the by and large space cruiser that we saw advertised earlier, and you know, it happens to be 100 billion times the size of the one that he's on. Once the smaller ship comes inside of the space cruiser, Eve and multiple other identical robots are taken out to be cleaned by the cleaning robots. So Wally, using his high IQ imposter tactics, stands in one of the robot's places to ensure that he's taken to the same place and given the same treatment as Eve. Once the cleaning squad finish their deep cleansing ritual, all of the robots are scanned to see if they've come back from Earth positive. And you know, the phrase coming back positive kind of reminds me of this one thing, and I can't quite put my finger on it.
COVID!
Once it's shown that Eve is positive, she's laid out on some kind of automatic vehicle taking her into the main hall of the ship, so instinctively, Wally follows after her to make sure the two of them aren't separated. However, in doing so, Wally, the silly Billy, leaves muddy tracks all over the floor, so one of the cleaning robots has to follow after him, cleaning up as it goes. And remember this, because this is also foreshadowing. Upon entering, we see that the hallways are absolutely jam-packed with service robots, but also human beings, except every person is a little bit more, one second. They're a little more hydrogenated vegetable fat because of being in space for so long. And noticeably, every single person is sitting on some kind of floating hover chair, and also they're always talking to someone on a digital screen in front of them, even if they're right next to the person they're digitally talking to.
All morning, so let's hover over to the driving range and hit a few virtual balls into space.
Nah, we did that yesterday. I don't want to do that.
Well, then what do you want to do?
I don't know. Something.
And I don't want to discredit the point that the film is making here, but this is definitely a very 2008 way of looking at things. Back then, the idea of being social online and having online friends was a lot less respectable, and there was a growing stigma that if you use social media, you'll get addicted and never go outside again, when in reality, social media is just a big competition to see who can go outside the most. In Wally's pursuit of finding Eve, a guy in his hover chair mistakes Wally for a service robot and falls to the ground as he tries to hand Wally his empty cup. Because of this little accident, a disruption in the traffic flow is created, and two actual service robots pull up beside the guy and act as digital wet floor signs. Luckily, Wally, being a good guy, helps the guy back onto his chair and allows them to carry on with his day, but this does show how the space cruiser has become completely dependent on obedient technology, and one little seemingly insignificant thing going out of place can cause a massive problem. Also, I thought at some point we should address my quarantine haircut. Look, please try to ignore it. And much like the Earth that we saw earlier, the ship is absolutely overloaded with advertisements displaying all of the products and services that by and large has to offer, including a preschool, meaning children are born into this system and have never experienced the outside world. Like I have. Also, just a quick reminder, I do actually go outside in this video, so stick around if you want proof. Wally then notices Eve being transported on some kind of futuristic streetcar, so he manages to get on board it before it starts moving. Unfortunately though, some person is sitting in between Wally and Eve, and oh my god, Wally, he is not happy about this. Nuh-uh, Wally is having none of it. Get in between Wally and Eve and you're digging your own grave, I'm telling you. So he goes up to the person and asks her to move politely. But the person doesn't really notice Wally, so he has to resort to turning off the screen in front of her to get her attention. Once the screen in front of her does go off, she looks around in amazement at the inside of the ship in front of her, which just goes to show how the passengers on board this ship have gotten so used to their routine of sitting down and communicating online that they don't even take the time to look at their physical surroundings. Wally then follows Eve all the way up to the highest social class of the ship, the captain's deck, where they almost interrupt the captain doing his morning announcements. During this particular morning announcement, it is announced in the morning that today is the 700th anniversary of the ship being in space, which just goes to show that every single passenger on the ship has been born into the system and has never been outside. Society.
Oh, hey, I see the ship's log is showing that today is our 700th anniversary of our 5-year cruise. Well, I'm sure our forefathers would be proud to know that 700 years later we'd be doing the exact same thing they were doing.
After the captain is finished with the morning announcements, the artificially intelligent autopilot tells the captain that one of the Eve probes has come back positive, which we find out has never happened before. The autopilot, or Auto for short, then powers on Eve, catching the attention of Wally, who is currently hiding under the desk from the captain because he's actually not meant to be there. Auto then instructs the captain to press the button on the dashboard that you're supposed to press in this situation, and when he does, a video is played explaining that the space cruiser can now start heading back to Earth because they can tell from Eve's sample that Earth has redeveloped ongoing photosynthesis. The video also says that there is a plant detector on board the ship, and once you've put the plant in it, the ship will automatically start heading back to Earth now that it's deemed safe for human inhabitants. You guys, I don't know why this is so difficult for me. Green Screen Jack will be back soon. I'm just gonna take a quick break. This is productive. This is what I've been doing while I was gone all these months. As the video plays out, Wally is then able to sneak over to Eve and get her attention, and Eve is definitely surprised to see Wally, but she's not very excited. Instead, she just immediately tells Wally to go back into hiding out of fear of them both getting caught for talking during a movie. Otto then opens up Eve's chest to retrieve the plant, only to notice when opening it that it's completely missing. Eve then immediately, yet falsely, blames Wally for the plant's disappearance, since he's the only thing in this whole operation that isn't where it's meant to be or doing what it's supposed to do. But interestingly, the captain actually seems kind of relieved that Eve doesn't have the plant, because now the ship doesn't have to go back to Earth. You see, the captain doesn't want to go to Earth because he's never been before, and he's scared of breaking away from the routine that he's spent his whole life getting used to, and I'm pretty sure this can be applied to every passenger on board the ship. Because of this little mishap, the captain sends Eve off to the repair ward because he assumes that she's malfunctioning, but before he can even finish his instruction to Otto, he spots Wally. So Wally, now in the same position as my friend from maths who got into trouble for hiding in a cupboard, realizes he's been caught and comes up to the captain to shake his hand, but unintentionally leaves a bit of soil behind on the captain's hand. The captain then suggests that Wally goes with Eve to the repair ward to get himself clean. The captain then takes the soil from Wally's hand and puts it in a material analyzer, and then starts to become more and more interested with the origin of soil, and finds himself going down an internet rabbit hole to do with Earth, its traditions, and modern Earth culture. The next scene shows the cleaning robot from earlier still cleaning up the muddy tracks from Wally, and this isn't necessarily foreshadowing, but it is an important detail to remember so that we don't forget about it in a later scene to come. Meanwhile, on the way to the repair ward, we can see that Eve is frustrated with Wally because she still thinks that Wally is the reason for the plant's disappearance when he's actually not. Our man didn't do nothing. You want to know what I think? Hose man. When they finally arrive at the repair ward, Eve is taken to a separate, closed-off section for only the highest class of citizens, while Wally is put in the main area with all of the other public schooling malfunctioning robots. Hey, what's up? How you doing? This video falls perfectly within fair use, basically meaning Pixar, you're not within your legal rights to take this video down. Thank you. I love you. Eve's part of the repair ward is sectioned off by a translucent glass wall, so Wally can only really see a blurry silhouette of what's going on in there. So from his perspective, Eve getting checked up on and being compliantly dismantled by the repair robots looks as if she's being inhumanely tortured. So Wally rebelliously, heroically, and badassly leaves his designated spot in the repair ward and breaks the glass to Eve's area to come to her rescue. This is a reminder to the viewer that Wally will always be loyal to Eve, and even though Eve is frustrated with Wally right now, he's still willing to take drastic measures to make sure she's safe no matter the consequences. When he breaks in, he instinctively uses Eve's built-in laser gun arm from
the machine's arm
and uses it to threaten the repair machines to let Eve go. Unfortunately, this results in him accidentally firing the gun backwards, hitting a switch on the wall and shutting off power for the entire repair ward, meaning that all of the malfunctioning robots are now set free and all of the machinery is powered off. After this, however, all of the malfunctioning robots now look up to Wally and see him as some kind of savior, so they'll now do, to the best of their ability, whatever they assume he needs. So with the help of all the malfunctioning robots, Wally and Eve managed to escape the repair ward. I guess it wasn't that hard because all the doors were open. But not for long, because during their escape, they're stopped by a bunch of mean old security robots that take pictures of Wally and Eve to use as warnings that get plastered all over the ship, stating that they're rogue robots and should be avoided at all costs.
Caution, rogue robots.
Hey, this video is kinda long.
And I appreciate you being here up until this point. Thankfully, Eve then takes the two of them to the escape pod, and when Wally gets in the escape pod, he expects Eve to come in with him, but then she reminds Wally that she has a job to do and that he should go back to Earth alone to stay out of any trouble. But Wally obviously refuses to leave Eve and steps out of the escape pod, and in the same way that my lame parents try to convince me that I shouldn't spend what little money I have on Fortnite currency, Eve tries to convince Wally that him going back to Earth is for the best. I understand that Fortnite jokes aren't funny. I was just reading it from my notes that I probably wrote when it was very late at night and I was very tired. I apologize. But as the two argue, a security robot comes into the room, so Wally and Eve hide behind the door of the escape pod. It's then revealed that the robot somehow has the missing plant and puts it on the floor of the escape pod and sets the pod to self-destruct once it's in space, ensuring that it's destroyed for good. Once the security robot leaves, Wally, once again claiming the role of the hero, runs into the escape pod while Eve's not looking and tries to retrieve the plant. Unfortunately, the escape pod was already set to shoot off into space and self-destruct, so by the time Wally starts leaving, the doors are closed and the escape pod is launched. Eve, now fully realizing how much she would truly miss Wally if they were ever separated, launches herself into space and goes after Wally as fast as she can. Meanwhile, inside of the escape pod, Wally is frantically pressing buttons and trying to pry the door open with a fire extinguisher before it self-destructs. Oh, yo, new recording time. Sadly, despite her best efforts to go after the escape pod, she stops, only to watch it explode in front of her, and at the thought of never seeing her only companion ever again, Eve cries, not only out of grief, but potentially out of guilt for the situation that she feels like she brought him into. She then flies over to the remains of the escape pods, but then sees that Wally actually survived because he managed to get the door open before being blown to pieces. Using the escape pod's fire extinguisher, Wally maneuvers himself over to Eve and shows her that he still has the plant. She then takes the plant, but this time, instead of doing what she's been trained to do, she just gives Wally a big ol' hug, dude, because her initial instinct to take the plant to the captain has been completely overlooked purely by how happy she is to see that Wally is okay. She then gives Wally a kiss. Or at least I think it's a kiss. Maybe it's just a very intimate robot forehead zap, but still, it shows that in this moment, for the very first time, Eve is actually more passionate about Wally than the other way around. Eve and Wally are now on the very best terms they've ever been on with each other. The fear of separation from one another shows the audience and the characters themselves that now that they have a taste for the pure happiness they bring each other, they couldn't bear to see it ripped away from them. Then, just for funsies, Wally and Eve chase each other through space, which alludes back to the foreshadowing set up at the beginning of the movie, but the difference is now that Wally actually gets to share this experience with Eve, and he's not just admiring from a distance as Eve flies around by herself. And honestly, it's one of the most visually pleasing scenes from any movie I've ever seen. It's almost as beautiful as the scene from Diary of a Wimpy Kid 3 when Greg falls off of the diving board and swims around naked in a public pool. And I can genuinely remember, like, when I was a lot younger, that was like the most hilarious thing. Meanwhile, that woman that Wally had told to move earlier in the film was looking out of the ship window at Wally and Eve having fun together, and lost in her own admiration, just like Wally was earlier, she forgets to move with the traffic flow and ends up colliding with the other guy that Wally had bumped into. And guys, the two of them hit it off almost immediately, showing to the viewer that good things don't come around by just following a system, and that there always has to be something in life keeping things random and unpredictable. And in this case, Wally was that much needed variable that fell out of place, allowing a butterfly effect to be created, making these two people meet. But if the system they were forced into from birth had gone perfectly to plan, they never would have even ever met. Wow. And while this is happening, we're reminded that the captain is continuing to research Earth and all of its traditions, and as he does, he becomes more and more obsessed with the idea of going back to Earth. Then Eve and Wally get back on board the ship, but we have to remember now that the two are currently wanted outlaws, so they need to find a way to get the plant to the captain without any of the security robots noticing. Luckily, Eve notices a garbage chute leading up to the bin in the captain's office, so she tells Wally to stay hidden. She flies up it and presents the plant to the captain. The captain then gets really excited at the thought of the ship finally going back to Earth, just like he had been fantasizing about. So he plugs something into Eve that allows him to see her memories of Earth. But then he gets disappointed because the Earth that he's seeing now is way different from the Earth that he saw online. And this is probably alluding to the fact that the Earth that we see in the media looks way nicer, and it looks nothing like the Earth that we're seeing in real life. Meanwhile though, Wally gets bored of waiting for Eve, so he climbs up the garbage chute to go see her. And while this is happening, the captain tells the autopilot that he wants to put the plant in the ship's plant detector so the ship can start going back to Earth. But for some reason, instead of following the captain's orders and taking the plant to the plant detector, the autopilot refuses to do so and shows the captain a video explaining that the Earth has been deemed uninhabitable for human life.
Just cut it off, will you? Hey there, autopilots. Got some bad news. Operation Cleanup has, failed. Wouldn't you know, rising toxicity levels have made life unsustainable on Earth.
Unsustainable? What?
The video also explains that the autopilot can't allow the ship to go back to Earth, even if one of the Eve robots does come back with proof of ongoing photosynthesis. This is the first time that the film introduces the theme of disobedient technology, and it's definitely one of the most prominent themes moving forward from this point. It's only 3 more pages. You can read 3 more pages. The captain then makes the argument to Otto that that video was made 700 years ago, back when the ship was just leaving Earth, and that things had changed since that point, but as it seems, the autopilot doesn't care, and just ordered the same security robot from earlier to come into the room and throw the plant into the garbage chute. And when the robot throws it in, first try may I add, it re-emerges because Wally, on his way up, managed to catch it. So the autopilot then tries to take the plant off of Wally, but he refuses to let go, so Otto then pulls a foul move and electrocutes Wally until he falls into the garbage chute and goes completely powerless, taking the plant with him. The autopilot then powers off Eve and sends her down too, because I guess they just don't like her. Otto then goes full mutiny and puts the captain's deck into lockdown. COVID. But this means that the captain can't leave his deck or control anything on board the ship, and this shows that the autopilot has all along had full control over the captain, and that humans have secretly been deemed inferior to robots from the very beginning of the ship's time and space. The next scene shows Wally and Eve in the waste disposal area, where they're about to be compressed into massive cubes of rubbish and launched into space. Thankfully, Eve manages to break free from her cube and then immediately tries to go and help Wally out because he's too weak from the electrocution to get out on his own. Meanwhile, that gosh darn cleaning robot is still following Wally's muddy tracks, and he gets himself jammed in the door of the waste disposal area as the doors into space open. And thank gosh, Eve managed to break Wally out and get them both back inside before it was too late, thanks to the cleaning robot holding the door open. Once they're safely in the main part of the waste disposal, Eve frantically starts looking for spare parts to try and repair Wally with, but after none of them work, Wally reminds Eve that he has an entire collection of spare parts back on Earth. And because of this, Eve now has a whole new level of motivation to put the plant in the plant detector and get the ship back to Earth. So the new gang, consisting of Eve, Wally, the plant, and the cleaning robot, break out of the waste disposal basement and head into the main hall of the ship to find that gosh darn plant detector. While this is happening, the captain, who's still stuck in his room, manages to broadcast a video to Wally and Eve explaining to them where the plant detector is. So now it's just a matter of Eve, Wally, the cleaning robot, and the redeveloped army of malfunctioning robots getting to the plant detector and forcing their way through any security robots. Then, using Eve's memories from earlier, the captain implements a pro gamer move and sends a video directly to the autopilot, convincing it that he has the plant. Otto then takes the bait and goes into the captain's room to get the plant from him, only to be tricked into dragging the captain back up into the control deck. This allows the captain to once again press the plant icon on the dashboard, sending the entire ship into lockdown and all of the passengers into one part of the ship, with the intention of the ship finally setting course for Earth. And long story short, Wally and Eve do get the plant into the plant detector, but it involves Wally getting pretty badly crushed and the captain standing on his own 2 feet for the first time to manually power off the autopilot. The captain walking is a huge implication of how motivated he is to get the ship back to Earth, and as we've seen already in the film, walking has become completely obsolete due to technology, and now walking has only been done during a drastic measure and a last resort when technology is clearly no longer on the human side. Okay, I'm back. Let's do this. The ship then immediately sets course for Earth, and Wally is set free, yet unfortunately damaged to the point of barely being able to move. The space cruiser then finally arrives at Earth, and as the passengers start leaving, they follow in the captain's footsteps, literally, and begin walking for the first time. Damn. This tells the viewer that not all hope for humanity has been lost, and that the passengers haven't been in space for so long that they've devolved beyond basic human functionality. Walking, in this case, is being used as a metaphor to show that with a little bit of work, humans can redevelop basic skills like socializing and exploring, and in doing so, they can redeem their second chance as a civilization. Instinctively, Eve frantically takes Wally back to his house to repair all of his broken parts, and after doing so, she shoots a hole in the roof to recharge his battery, which was probably a tad unnecessary, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. In the name of love. Wally then turns on, and he takes a few minutes to regain his memory, but once it came back, Wally and Eve were both very, very relieved to see each other. As the movie comes to an end, the musical that Wally held his own hand to starts to play as Wally and Eve hold hands and make themselves close to one another. The camera then pans away from the final shot of the captain showing everybody how photosynthesis works, showing that the plant is in good hands and that the humans have all the resources they need to refacilitate life on Earth once again. So yeah, that's my take on the movie WALL-E, and right off the bat, I'm feeling 10 out of 10 chocolate chips on a cookie on this one, just because this movie basically has no flaws. Well, except there was that one plot hole where it's never really explained how Eve loses the plant. But regardless, this movie is a true masterpiece, if not for the incredible storytelling, then for the amazing animation, visuals, and seamless blending of two polar opposite aesthetics. The fine craftsmanship of which still stands out today, but hey, don't just take my word for it. Here's a bunch of other people saying that WALL-E is good.
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 WALL-E is an excellent film. Cinematic masterpiece.
WALL-E is good.
WALL-E is good. But WALL-E isn't just good. WALL-E is one of the best films of all time. Actually, you know what? Take that back. I love WALL-E. Look at this sexy
robot
right here. I just, oh my gosh.
WALL-E is honestly great. Like, I'm not being told to say this. Honestly, on my own volition, like, I do not have a man pointing a gun to my head right now, telling me to say the film's good, even though I haven't seen. No, I have seen the film. Listen, man, all I know is that WALL-E is a great film. Please, let me go, please.
So what message is this film trying to convey? Well, I'd say it's probably something about the environment and how we're manufacturing way too many things to keep the Earth healthy, which is true, and if you look at the Earth in the movie, you can see that most of the rubbish is from single-use or mass-produced items. There is definitely a running commentary in the movie about how we should all be doing something about the environment and making a change for good. And oh my gosh, that does not mean posting shocking statistics on your Instagram story about the environment, and if I see one more person saying that it actually spreads awareness, I will go out into the middle of my street, start a gas fire, and burn all of my plastic possessions. But with that message aside, I think there's absolutely something in there about how we should go out and enjoy the Earth while we still have it and experience this beautiful planet before it reaches one of its many points of no return. So let's go do that.
Audio Jungle.
As always, I'll be responding to every single comment, and if you want to join our Discord server, then I would really like that. But as always, I sincerely hope that you have a nice day. Hey, sorry this video took so long. Hey, yo, hey, it's your boy J Cam. We rapping on the beat, and every time I do, you know I bring the heat. I generate the money, I count all the rats. I step into the booth and I kill a couple tracks. Ain't no one in the game got bars like this. If you tell me that I'm wrong, then I'll hit you with a dish. My Discord server is blowing up. We got a million different channels, but never enough. My new video on YouTube is nearly done. Ha, psych, JK hasn't even begun. Wait, no, that's a joke, don't unsubscribe. You even think about that, I will certainly cry.